So we have a Sicha here that the Rebbe said on Hey Teves, Tafshin Nun Beis 5752, could be either end of 1991 or beginning of 1992, depends when it came out, the calendar year then. Okay, with the Sicha, the Rebbe said on a Wednesday night, and since it was Parshas Vayigash, the Rebbe also entered a little bit into the idea of Vayigash, even though that was yesterday's Parsha. But because in that week, Hey Teves came out in Parshas Vayigash that year. Aleph, Yom Ze Hey Teves, oops, we lost the document. What happened to the document? Yom Ze Hey Teves, this day of Hey Teves, is kasher im Shiur v'apidin shvoim shel sifrei v'kisvei rabbeinu nesienu. It's connected with the release to freedom and the redemption of captives of the Sfarim and the manuscripts of our Rabbeim, our Nesiim, B'Sifrius Agudas Chassidus Chabad Lubavitch, in the library of the Aguda of Chassidus Chabad Lubavitch, that's under the leadership and direction of my father-in-law, the leader of our generation. These days, they are remembered and they are done as it says in the Megillah, meaning, the way Chassidus explains, when this day arrives every single year, so we remind ourselves of what took place. Therefore, the very same things that occurred the first time around, it repeats itself as well annually when we recollect it and we remember it. According to the words of the Mishnah, mitzvah gereres mitzvah, that one mitzvah brings another mitzvah in its stead. Shekiyum ha-mitzvah mevis ha'adam ha-makayim ha-mitzvah l'kayim mitzvah nesefes. The fulfilling one mitzvah brings the person that fulfilled the mitzvah to fulfill an additional mitzvah. Ubefrat u'beikar l'kayim mitzvah zu atzma. And especially, it will bring the person to do that very mitzvah itself. So when a person's involved, like he's going to explain in Pidyon Shvuyim of Svarim, it will bring him to more Pidyon Shvuyim of Svarim. This is a rule concerning every mitzvah. The Pidyon Shvuyim, how much more so concerning the great mitzvah of redemption of captives. Again, the Rebbe is calling the redemption of the Svarim redemption of captives. And in Chazal and Shulchan Aruch, it's brought down that the greatest form of tzedakah is redeeming captives. So if we're talking about any mitzvah drags another mitzvah in its wake, how much more so when the mitzvah is the redeeming of captives, redeeming of the Sfarim. The mitzvah and the idea of redeeming captives, that was affected on the 5th of Teves when the court case was ruled in favor of Agudas Chassidus Chabad. It is, even though it's not the literal idea of redeeming of captives, so it's still similar to it. So the Rebbe says in footnote 5, under the second column, so he says, the move on, it's understood, Geulah inyan shel mitzvahs pidyon shvuyim, the great idea and the great matter of the mitzvah of redeeming captives, shepoidim Yisrael hashavi bi'adomus ha'olam, that we redeem a yid that's in captivity by non-Jews, who gam kim benegea l'chol sefer v'sefer b'Torah. The Rebbe says it applies to every single Sefer, every single book in Torah. Why? The Torah of Hashem that's found in captivity in the hands of foreigners. Especially since the Torah and every book of Torah is our life and the length of our days. So since it's our life, therefore it's considered saving our lives by saving any Sfarim that are in captivity. Back to the top of the second column. Poil, so this affects Geulah, it drags in its wake, Sheikaimu, in its wake, Sheikaimu oid mitzvahs, which fulfill more mitzvahs, ubefratu beikar, and especially and primarily mitzvahs pidyon shvuyim, the redemption of captives, beinyan zeh, the pidyon svarim atzmei, in this matter, in the redemption of svarim itself, that he says that there are still svarim that are waiting to be returned, and this, the celebration and marking of it, is going to assist in those svarim that are still awaiting to be returned, and that should occur immediately. The Rebbe says. Let's see also. There's the bottom of the footnote number 7 that the Rebbe says that what does schar mitzvah mean? That min hashamayim, they assist and they make available in the hands of someone that did one mitzvah that he should do another mitzvah. That's part of the reward. In other words, in addition to in addition to what we just now said, mitzvah gereres mitzvah, also the reward of a mitzvah is the mitzvah, meaning the reward of one mitzvah is that they give him the opportunity to continue either doing that mitzvah or other mitzvahs. Let's skip down on the second page of the text to the bottom in Ois Beis, after speaking about the idea about I'm sorry, not the bottom of the second page. Let's go to the top of the second page, second paragraph. We can add the mitzvah gereres mitzvah, the above mentioned matter of one mitzvah brings another mitzvah in its wake. Mitzvah achas the pidyon shvuyim, the mitzvah shnia the pidyon shvuyim, from one mitzvah of redeeming captives, it brings along another mitzvah of redeeming captives. It's even more emphasized when we're not talking about so much physical captives, but we're talking about the redemption of the captive Sfarim. Sifrei Torah hem inyan shel chachma, books, Torah books. He doesn't mean Sefer Torah as the Torah scroll. Torah books are an idea of wisdom. Ubezeh gufa, and in wisdom itself, it's chachma kedosh. It's a holy wisdom, chachma Torah, the wisdom of the Torah. Move mekach, it's understood from this. Shekol sefer b'Torah negea gam l'chol shar asfarim. Every single Torah book matters for all other Torah books. Why? What's the idea behind it? Ki ha'idei halimud v'ha'idea b'sefer zeh nasa hisafa b'havona v'asaga d'shar asfarim. When I study one sefer, so this increases my understanding and comprehension of all other Torah books. Therefore, the mitzvah gereres mitzvah and the one pidyon shvuyim that brings about another redeeming of captives are really interconnected. So too concerning our topic, since the completion and perfection of studying the Sfarim that were prior to this time, that their release and freedom was affected on the 5th of Teves, they're dependent in studying those Sfarim that are now temporarily found in captivity. Nimtza comes out, Shleimus HaPidyon, the Sfarim Elu B'Hei Teves, that the perfect and the completion of the redemption of these Sfarim that were released on the 5th of Teves is, when is it perfect? When is it complete? Kasher Zemevi Lepidyon Shal Sfarim HaMurim, when it brings about the above mentioned redemption and release of the Sfarim, B'chol Shara Sfarim Shemamtinim Adayin Lepidyonim, that are still waiting for their redemption, because every sefer impacts every other sefer. So therefore, the release of certain Svarim on Hey Teves leads to and are only perfect when you have the other Svarim released also. And he continues, Befrat is especially so, Sheshteim Chelik Misifriya Achas. Both Svarim, the Svarim that, both groups of Svarim, the Svarim that were released on the 5th of Teves, and those Svarim that will be released on in the near future, hopefully with our putting in effort for their release, are part of one library, Sifri Sagudos Chabad Shem Nesiusai, the Kveches Meir Chamad Munasidrainu, the library of Agudos Chabad that's under the leadership of my father-in-law, the leader of our generation. V'oid v'gamze iker. Additionally, and also this is primary. V'adra b'hua iker. Even more so, this is what's primary. Ha-mitzvah the pidyon shvuim b'hei teves, the mitzvah of redeeming the captives on the 5th of Teves, top of the second column. Pa'eles al derech mitzvah gereres mitzvah. Effects in a way of a mitzvah drawing along as another mitzvah. Gam es amitius v'shleimus ha-pidyon shvuim ha'idei HaKadosh Baruch Hu. When we redeem the captives of the Svarim, that brings about the true redemption of captives through Hashem. What is the true redemption of captives through Hashem? Hapidyon dechol b'nei Yisrael, the redemption of all Yidden, v'chol inyan Torah, v'chol inyan klulam, and the redemption of all matters of Torah and all matters entirely. Mei hagolus el Geulah amitis v'ashlema, from exile to the true and complete redemption. V'yesh lahoisif, and we can add to this, shagam inyan zeh hashayches the pidyon shvuim la Geulah, also this connection, the association between redeeming captives to the redemption, mudgish memyuchad b'negesh pidyon shvuim shel Svarim, is especially emphasized concerning the redemption of captives of Svarim, ki yadu, as it's known, she'inyan hageulah, the redemption of, through Moshiach, totally ba'pidyon, is dependent upon redeeming habirur v'zichuch v'Allah, the refining, purification, and the elevation, the kol nitzutzik kedushish nimtzoim achshav b'shivya, of all sparks of holiness that are found now in captivity, behelam v'hester shalo olam, in the concealment and covering of the world. Since all matters begin and start with Torah, moving Ephai, therefore it's understood that the empowerment for the releasing of all the sparks in the entire world, the pidyon shvuyim of all the sparks of the entire world, which is the key to the Geulah, comes from something like it in the Torah, hapidyon dinyani Torah, hamutsuyim b'shivya, by the redeeming matters of Torah that are found in captivity. So from redeeming Torah from captivity, because Torah is the source of everything, Hashem looked into the Torah and created the world. Torah is the blueprint for the entire world, and for the reason why the entire world was created. So by redeeming and doing redemptions the way it's in Torah, we are able to do the redemption of the sparks in the entire world, and therefore lead to the final redemption, the idea of the Geulah. The Rebbe goes on to say, another point in the association of these two topics, the true redemption and the true victory of Svarim is, like it's understood and obvious, only and specifically when through and because of the redemption, it's increased and even more so in the study of the Torah, of Svarim of Torah. The Rebbe brings in the footnote that even though the primary part is a Sefer Torah, Torah scroll, but still in order to be able to bring the ideas of the Torah scroll into the practical, one needs to know many other Svarim that elaborate and explain what it says in the Torah scroll. And therefore, one can fulfill the mitzvah of writing a Torah by not writing necessarily Torah books, but by Bechlal writing all types of Svarim, including the purchase of Svarim. So he says, and the Rebbe goes on back to the brackets, last 3 lines in the page, primarily in the study of these Svarim that were released from captivity. Moving for this is understood, Sicha Hey Teves, that the day of the 5th of Teves, Tzarich Lahavi Imay Chizuk, it has to bring along a strengthening, v'haisafa, and an increase, b'limud Svarim shel Torah, in the study of Torah books, Maschel Ma'asefer Rishon Sh'B'Torah Sh'Vapeh Sefer HaMishnayos, beginning from the first book of the oral Torah, which is Sefer Mishnayos. Mishnayos is the first book that was transcribed of the oral Torah before any other oral Torah was studied. Beforehand, all the oral Torah was studied orally, and the Mishnayos was the first thing that was written down. And then, after the Mishnayos was written down, so then the Gemara was delved into it, and there was Midrashim and so on. Val Pisa move on. Yoiser eich pidyon asfarim mevil de hapidyon hakloli de Geulah. Here we have another concept of how the redemption and release of the Sfarim brings to the general redemption and release of the Geulah, of the Moshiach coming. Because pasuk, it says clearly in the pasuk, Tzion b'mishpat tipadogoyim. Tzion with mishpat will be redeemed. Mishpat means the study of law. Law means Torah. Torah means Torah law. That Zaysemeres, this means Shai de limud Torah through the study of Torah. Shebezem is bata kanal amitius hanitzachon opinion asfarim. That in the study of Torah, that's what it expresses the true victory and redemption of Sfarim. Nasa hapidyon de Tzion becomes the redemption of Tzion. Ubefrat aidei limud Sfarim, especially through the study of Sfarim. Maschel mesefer HaMishnayos, beginning from the Sefer of Mishnayos, Kemaimer Chazal, like the Chazal state, Ein kol agolius miskanses ela b'schus HaMishnayos. All the Geulah do not gather, meaning they do not return, only in the merit of Mishnayos. So Mishnayos has a special power. And that the fact that Tzion is redeemed with Mishpat, Mudgish Oidyoiser, is emphasized even more so, that when you have already redeemed Sfarim, by studying Sfarim that were already released and redeemed from captivity. So, by learning Sfarim that were released from captivity, that helps the redemption of captivity that the study of Torah is supposed to accomplish. And to add, Shemazem moving Gaman Negel Lepoil, from this also understood concerning actuality, Shamaura de Hey Teves Sarach Lahavi L'Choil Roish, at the event of the 5th of Teves has to first and foremost bring about Chizuk V'Yisafa B'Limud Asfarim, the strengthening and increase in studying of Sfarim, top of the second column, Koilul L'Maschel Melimud Mishnayos, including and beginning with the study of Mishnayos, that this affects Shemepidyon Asfarim Ba'im Tekev Lepidyon HaGeulah Kanal, that from redeeming Sfarim we come immediately to the redemption of the Geulah with Moshiach, like we said before. And we don't have to actually open the book yet, but Vaidei Etzem HaAchlotes B'zeh, through the very making resolutions about this, since Hashem sees that the decision to do so are true, the person is sincere in making that resolution, and he sees that in their sincerity they'll surely fulfill it. So therefore, the actual resolution affects as if they actually studied the Mishnayos, and therefore it's actually going to bring the Geulah even before we have a chance to do so. So in the next In the next piece, the Rebbe speaks about what the Zohar says, that in last week's parsha it says, Vayigash Elov Yehuda, that Yehuda's approaching Yosef is about that there has to be smichas Geulah l'tfilah, that during Shachris, when we say Baruch Atah Hashem Goal Yisrael, we have to immediately go from Goal Yisrael without interruption to Tefillah of Shemoneh Esrei. There's not supposed to be any type of interruption in between. And the reason for this is, let's see the top of the next page. Iker Hatam al Smichas Geulah Tefillah, the main reason for why we go straight from speaking about redemption to Shemoneh Esrei, so that our tefillah should be accepted. Like the Talmud Yerushalmi brings down, Kol Misha Einei Taikif Geula Tefillah, someone that doesn't say immediately after Geulah, he doesn't say Tefillah, Lemahu Daim, to what is it likened to? He gives a metaphor, an analogy for this. La'oyavay Shamelach Sheba V'hirtik V'dafik Al Piskei Shamelach. There was a friend of the king that came and knocked on the door of the king. Yotza, the king goes out, laid a Maum Avakish, to see what the friend is looking for. Umatzah, and the king found Shehiflig, that his friend left. Oid hu hiflig, since he left, Gam HaMelech hiflig imenu, so the king also left him as well. What does this mean? This is the idea of Geulah being close to davening. You want Geulah, you can't interrupt with that Geulah from a davening, or else you're going to come to the davening and the king is saying what you want. Similar to this is also in the situation under discussion right now. Hey Teves Yom Shekosher Im Inyan HaGeulah. The 5th of Teves is that day that's connected with the idea of redemption. HaGeulah v'apidyon the Sifir Abeseinu Sienu, the redemption and the release from imprisonment of the Sfarim of our Rabbeim. Kanal Sifalef, like we learned in the first ois of the Sicha. V'teikev b'smichus le'HaGeulah kayemes hatfilo bakasha chulu, and immediately, in close proximity to that redemption, there exists the tefillah, in other words, Geulah and tefillah. From the Geulah, we come right away to request. We're requesting and davening for those Sfarim that still are awaiting their release from imprisonment. And even more so, we're not just requesting the Sfarim that are waiting for their release, but the davening for the general redemption, in the true and complete redemption, Kanal Sifal V'Elach. So the Rebbe takes the idea that the Chazal speak about Geulah l'tfilah, that you need to have Goal Yisrael right next to davening, and he says the past redemption of the Sfarim needs to lead us to ask and be mispalel for future redemption of Sfarim, but primarily and more importantly for the redemption of Klal Yisrael. Through the fact that davening comes in close proximity to redemption. And in our case, that the davenings that we spoke about before are coming in close proximity to the effect of the redemption. The redemption of captives that are affected in this day, the 5th of Teves. Hareza poil, this affects Shakadosh Baruch Hu Yikablas Tfilseim Shel Bnei Yisrael, that Hashem will accept the tefillas of Klal Yisrael. Take it from Miyad, and immediately Yifta Kol Asfarim, it will redeem all the Sfarim. V'Yifta is Kol Bnei Yisrael Begula Mitzvah Shleim, will redeem all the Bnei Yisrael in the true and complete redemption. So he says, let's have a look in footnote 32. On the bottom of the second column, the Yeshleimer, we could say Shekeshem shesmichas geulah tefillah hu ba'ofen she'ein shum hefsek b'neihem. Just like in davening, we're supposed to say Gal Yisrael and immediately start with Shemoneh Esrei without any type of interruption between them. Skip the brackets. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines down. Al derech zehu gam b'negel lemilui habakosha shebetfilah. In a similar vein, concerning fulfilling the request that's in davening. Sheniflai de smichas geulah tefillah k'bepnim. That is affected through saying and placing the Geulah before davening, close to davening, like we said earlier, that when do we have our requests answered? When we make the Geulah and davening come together. Shehu besmichus mamish latfilah bakosha. That's very close to our davening and our requests. So therefore, has to be, this time, in other words, has to be close for a time of davening for the Geulah, the time of the redemption of the Sfarim. Don't delay. Use this time of this day to daven for Moshiach. Back to the text on top of the page, second paragraph in the same in the second column. With our youth and our elderly, with our sons and our daughters, we go along with all the Sfarim. Both the Sfarim that already returned, like we mentioned before, so that the Sfarim were returned earlier. And both the Sfarim and manuscripts that will be returned immediately, we will all go l'artzeinu ha'kdoshah, to our holy land. According to what was said before, in continuation, what it says, that the idea of the study of Torah, that engenders the Geulah, like we said in the third ois. So what does it say in the continuation of Pasuk? V'shaveh b'tzedakah. Its captives or its returnees is through tzedakah. This means to say, tzedakah pay'elos za'ini the pidyon shvuim. Tzedakah affects the idea of redemption of captives. Like the Chazal say, tzedakah is great that it brings the Geulah close. We will now make each and every one of you a shliach, a messenger for tzedakah. Yitnu shtei shtaros. We will give $2 bills. One bill that everyone could do with it as they like. And another bill that to give for tzedakah. Should be the will of Hashem. Shakim mitzvah tzedakah to karv tezar is yosh sagula. The fulfillment of the mitzvah of tzedakah will bring even closer and speed up even more so the redemption. Asher gam bezirus yeshlem kamesh shiurim ve'fanim. That also in speeding things up, there are different measures of speeding up and different manners how things can be sped up. So the Rebbe says it should be the ultimate speed. It should be as speedy as it's supposed to be, no interruption between Gal Yisrael and davening. It's without any interruption. This means to say, through the action of tzedakah, through the actions of tzedakah, there is immediately before even continuing speaking about all these matters, it occurs the true and complete redemption through Moshiach, along with Eliyahu Hanavi, that he should be remembered for good, that will tell us the news of the Geulah. We will therefore end up giving the tzedakah. We won't have the time to give it wherever we're located. We will give it for tzedakah and everything else that follows it in our holy land, in Yerushalayim, the holy city, and the holy mountain. And then the Rebbe says in the brackets, if heaven forbid there's a delay between when I'm giving you this money for tzedakah and the Geulah, Yitnu zois bezrizas kol echad vechad b'mkaime be'iroi b'isafim b'dalei. Every single one should give it speedily in their own place, in their own city, and with increase of their that they will increase on their own. In other words, they should add of their own money as well. And additional to this, and that's primary, with our youth and our elderly, with our sons and our daughters, men, women, and children, we will find ourselves with the clouds of heaven in Eretz Yisrael, along with good resolutions concerning tzedakah and good deeds in general and specifically. It should be done in the Holy Land, and over there in the holy city Yerushalayim, the holy mountain of Beis Hamikdash Shlishi, and the third Beis Hamikdash would take from Yad Mamish, and immediately so. And then it says that the Rebbe gave out and handed out dollars of tzedakah, like you said before, $2, $1 for personal use, and $1 to give it or its exchange for tzedakah.